Welcome to the Arrive U.S. Immigration Law podcast with your hosts Jeremy Richards and Christine Jerusik. Join us as we navigate the complex world of U.S. immigration law with a special focus on opportunities and challenges for Canadians and Mexicans under the USMCA. Whether you're a professional, business owner, or family member seeking to work and live in the United States, we're here to guide you every step of the way. So sit back and relax. You have arrived.
Welcome back to another episode of the Arrive podcast with myself, Jeremy Richards, and
Christine Jerusik.
And today we have some fun stuff to talk about. There's been a lot of things happening if you've been following U.S. immigration. So the first thing we're going to hit on today is the shutdown of the U.S. government because Congress failed to come to an agreement on passing a budget. What is it, October 2nd today? That was yesterday. So the U.S. government is officially on standstill. I just saw the Trump administration is comical, but he posted, I think the White House has posted a clock that's ticking saying how long the Democrats have shut down the government. And it's sitting there calculating how long the shutdown is on.
The blame game.
The blame game's live.
Yeah.
Ticking away. Right now as we speak, that clock is still ticking. So, but let's talk about how this impacts you as a Canadian. Why do you care that the U.S. government is shut down, and what impact, if any, is that going to have on your ability to travel to the U.S. or, more importantly,
do business
your ability
here,
to work or do business or
further your immigration prospects in the United States?
Exactly. So there are several different entities that are involved in the U.S. government that deal with U.S. immigration. So it's important to understand what these agencies are and how this impacts these agencies. So all of the agencies fall under the umbrella of what is called the Department of Homeland Security. They restructured this back around 9/11. They restructured the entire system. It used to be under INS, Immigration and Naturalization Services. Now it's all under Department of Homeland Security. And under that umbrella, you have agencies such as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So let's kick that one out of the way first. That's the acronym's USCIS. USCIS is 100% funded by the exorbitant fees they charge to file your applications. So they have no funding from the federal government. If your case is pending with USCIS, it's going to continue to process as inefficiently as it did before. Nothing's going to change, right?
Yeah, and I was actually at USCIS yesterday, and the officer I was in front of was wondering himself whether or not my client's green card was going to be able to be printed and whether or not the green card printing was under the umbrella of USCIS. And he told me it was not, so he had to check on that. And he confirmed that green cards are still being printed. USCIS is still conducting interviews. I was there yesterday. They're still processing cases. So if you have something pending right now, it's still in the queue to be approved or have a decision made on it.
So no worries if your case is with USCIS. Again, privately funded through their own fees, not by the U.S. government. All right, next one is the Department of State. And the Department of State governs certain visas, immigrant visas, and visas issued abroad. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about the consulates. So the U.S. consulate in Montreal, the U.S. consulate in Toronto. Those are the two that you primarily deal with when you're trying to live or work in the U.S. They will continue to process throughout this. You may see delays in processing, but the Department of State and the U.S. consulates will continue to operate throughout the government shutdown. So if you have an application that's pending for an immigrant visa, that would be through Montreal, you may see delays in that. Things will slow down. They always do when you have a government shutdown. But they will continue to process. And that also applies to e-visas that are done through the consulate. They're still adjudicating those. I would expect, again, a slowdown, but they are continuing to process those. So no impact on that front. Then the other one is U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And that's the one that Canadians deal with the most, the border. And the border does not shut down. It continues to process. Even when the government shuts down, the border stays open. And what does that mean? Well, they can continue to admit and deny entry of people to the United States, whether as a visitor, a TN, an L. They're continuing to do that. Now, could there be less staff and it could be slower.
I mean, we
Sure.
can't say the same for Canada right now because there's a
I
big
know.
issue on their border for admitting commercial traffic. Big backlogs there with the system-wide shutdown, from what I
Yeah.
understand, that's been
Traffic-
going on for days. So-
Traffic to work's been crazy because they shut down both the major exits
and
to our
all the
office
trucks are building up.
because they're diverting all these trucks that
Yeah.
can't get into Canada.
So if your goods are being delayed that you've ordered from the U.S. or
It's a Canadian problem, not a U.S.
well, that's a Canadian border issue. Yeah. And the last item is immigration courts. Are they staying open? Are they still processing cases? I know you and me don't deal with those, but
Staying
Shauna
open.
does. Yep.
They will continue to deport you. So they're not going to keep you here if you're in immigration
Right.
proceedings.
So non-detained hearings
ICE will continue to arrest
are
you.
continuing to proceed as normal. So.
ICE will continue to arrest people.
Yep.
They're going to still be doing investigations. The one agency that deals with U.S. immigration matters that is impacted and that does mess up the process is U.S. Department of Labor. U.S. Department of Labor is responsible for what are called prevailing wage determinations that are attached to H-1Bs, but they're also attached, more importantly, to green cards for employment-based cases. Those already take 6 to 7 months to be issued. Well, now people are still submitting those on a daily basis, and they're not being processed. So that backlog is just going to become longer.
Right.
And the other important part for the green card process is labor certification, is what they refer to it as, or as PERM. And the 9089 labor certification is also adjudicated by the Department of Labor. That was already listed at 500 days processing. That's going to become crazy long. So with this shutdown, every day, those backlogs are just going to become increasingly worse. So
because nobody's working on those.
Nobody's
right now.
working. They're just getting more in the queue and none going out.
They're getting filed.
Everyone will continue to file. So you don't stop filing because it will open again. And if you don't file, well, you're just going to be even that much farther behind. So you still want to file, but those wait times are just going to get longer and longer the longer they're closed. So that's how this government shutdown really is going to impact you as a Canadian. If you paid attention, not much if it's just normal travel or working. However, if you are in that green card process, it's already taking about 4 years for a Canadian to go through anyway through the PERM process. That's just going to become even longer. All right. The other huge change, and you probably saw this all over the news, was changes to the H-1B program, the $100,000 entry fee, as well as a revamping of the lottery system. So this impacts all new or future H-1Bs, not people that have already been approved, already filed, are already in the U.S. under H-1B program. This applies to the new lottery year. So this happens in April. There will be a required $100,000 fee per worker, which is insane. In other words, I think Trump's saying, we don't want foreign workers, so and not under the H-1B program. So
well,
here
he's
you go.
basically saying, hey, if you want to hire a foreign worker under the H-1B program, you're going to be, add an extra $100,000 on that HR expense right there for that individual. Maybe you can hire an American a little cheaper.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And they don't even have the guidance on how to pay this fee or anything yet.
Oh, no.
So it's very preliminary. And with this administration, it's likely to change before April anyway. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's looking like if everything stays, that you're going to have a $100,000 fee per employee. There are a lot of lawsuits challenging this, though. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like right now it's affecting anything. We have some H-1Bs that are changing employers and things like that.
No impact on existing people.
Yeah.
The other part in this one is probably more likely to stick. We'll see. But it's a change in the way they do the lottery process. So the way the H-1B lottery ran before is there were 2 lotteries that would run. One of them is the standard cap, and that refers to individuals who have a bachelor's degree or higher. And then the other one is a master's cap, and that is for those individuals that have a master's degree in the U.S. or higher. So there was $65,000 allocated to regular cap and another $20,000 allocated to master's cap. Well, now it looks like that doesn't even matter according to what they're saying, or actually they're adding another caveat on top of that. So that still applies, but in addition to those 2 caps, how they allocate your entries into those caps has changed. And what that looks like is, if you are familiar with the way they assign wages for H-1Bs, it's done through the Department of Labor through what is called a prevailing wage determination that we just mentioned, talking about the government shutdown. And there are 4 wage levels when the Department of Labor assigns wages. And these are essentially, you can refer to it as like a minimum wage that has to be paid for that person in that area of employment. If it's a level 1 wage, that would be an entry-level position. You would get 1 entry into the lottery. If it's a level 2 wage, that's slightly above. So maybe you have a bachelor's plus a couple years of experience. Then you would get 2 entries into the lottery. And then if you're level 3, you would get three entries. Level 4, 4 entries. So what that does is it encourages employers to hire more experienced individuals, and they get a higher chance to get those people in the lottery if they do. So this really puts new graduates at a disadvantage. If you are just out of college and you have no experience, those entry-level positions, you're going to get 1 entry versus somebody who's experienced in the field is going to get 4 entries in the same lottery. So it's going to make it increasingly difficult for students here in the United States that are on on student visas, to then get accepted into that lottery unless they get hired at a very high wage or have experience that would bump them up to, a level 2, 3, or even a 4 wage level. So that's going to impact the odds of getting into the lottery the way it looks so far. And again, these are things that haven't come into play yet. It's for the upcoming lottery season, and we'll see how it plays out. But these are some major changes. What does this mean for Canadians? Well, if you fall into a position that requires an H-1B, it's going to decrease your odds of your ability to work in the United States significantly. However, if you are a Canadian and your position qualifies for a TN occupation, well, you should strongly consider that as your alternative, because the TN, and they've done some changes to it, but for the most part, the TN has been untouched throughout this administration. They have promised that they're going to shake things up in 2026. We'll see what that means. But for now, the TN is your safest bet as a Canadian. Your ability to apply at the border and obtain TN status is not impacted by any of these recent changes. So if anything, you can use that as a security blanket. If you're Canadian, the TN visa is your lifeline. So you're lucky that you don't have to rely on the H-1B if you're a Canadian. For a lot of occupations, you can resort to the TN. And we've discussed many times in the past, the pathway from an H-1B to a green card and a TN to a green card goes through the same process of PERM. So you still have the ability to transition to a green card whether or not you're on a TN or an H-1B. So that part is not impacted for you. So if you're lucky enough to be in an occupation that falls under the TN occupations list, you can escape this whole H-1B fiasco.
Or if you have $1 million or your company has $2 million, they can get you a gold card. Then you can skip it over that whole process and just buy your permanent residence in the United States. Hey, there might be people that are interested in doing that.
Might be. I don't even know the details
There's no
on
process
that,
for it.
Yeah, we're not even going to discuss that. But yeah, that's apparently
get yourself a gold card.
Live now too. So if you want that gold card, go somewhere else. But it's available. Talk to Trump. I think if we had this guy who emailed us, we get some interesting contacts. And this guy's apparently Trump's best friend. In his own world that he is, at least. So maybe we reach out to him and he'll get us in contact with Trump so we can get the
hotline for the gold card for all those people that are queuing up to get one of those.
And the funny thing about this guy is he's in the United States working unauthorized, illegal.
Wow.
And he says he's working on Trump's deportation policies. So you are working on the policies to remove yourself from the country?
Interesting.
Anyway.
Sounds like a character.
Yeah, interesting situation.
So there's a new Globe and Mail article that came out, and they're warning Canadians travel to the United States is scary stuff. It's really terrible right now. Ooh, yeah, be scared. It's Halloween, spooky season. Watch out. So
Yeah.
how much of this is true? I mean, they're saying that, the U.S.
I can give you my 2 cents. You know what my 2 cents
Well,
is
I mean,
on
I
it.
looked up the actual travel guidance, and guess what color the U.S. is still? Green. We're green.
For go.
That means green. Go to the United States.
So
Guess what countries are not green?
Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexico's
All these
not.
all these
Cuba.
alternative countries where Canadians choose to travel because they're too scared to come to the United States. They choose to go to countries
yellow
that are
and
yellow.
red.
Yes. That are way worse and way more
Because
risk
the media
than
is
the United
playing
States.
you.
Yeah. Anyway, this article that came out, Globe and Mail, they're warning U.S. green card holders now that they might, encounter difficulty entering the United States if they've spent a lot of time in Canada. That's entirely, and I'll say all the stuff that they said is true, but it was true 6 months ago. It was true 6 years ago. It was true 10 years ago. It's all the same information. Nothing
Same
new.
regulations that have always been on the books.
Yeah. I don't know why they're making a big deal out of this. So it is true. If you have a green card and
You're not maintaining that green
and
card.
you're living in Canada, guess what? You might have trouble coming back to the United States if you spend a year or more out of the country. So
Always been the law.
always been the law. Nothing new there.
Oh, wait. And guess what?
What?
If you are trying to traffic drugs or commit a crime,
Yeah.
you might lose your green card too.
Oh, wow. That's not really new either. So we're being sarcastic here, but ultimately,
That's what's
I think
in the news, though.
what we're trying to say is this Globe and Mail article is sensationalizing
Travel to the US.
the state of affairs that has been the state of affairs for years and years.
And
and
let's
years.
let's talk candidly.
And nothing has changed. So,
Yeah, over the last it's 10 months now, right? We're in October.
yeah.
I have had 0 clients that have had any of this impact them. And the people that have called, because we get inquiries from some individuals
Right.
that fall into this category, or they end up with Shauna, she does immigration court at our office. Guess what? They violated their status somehow. They committed a criminal act. They did something to put themselves in that situation. So if you are going to enter the United States or want to enter the United States and you have a criminal history, you may have snuck by in the past, right? Under the radar. You're not going to now. They're really looking at your history. If you have any immigration violations or anything that could raise suspicion about your activity that's unlawful, well, you should take caution when traveling to the United States.
So green card holders, everything's the same. You still can
Same
visit.
laws.
You can still visit Canada, and you can still
Yeah, but you need that one travel thing too there, though, right?
what?
When you travel as a green card holder, you need to travel to the U.S. on your green card.
I'm saying so green card holders can travel to Canada and go stay in Canada if they want for a little while, but they can't stay more than a year.
Yep.
You got to be living in the United States. You can take a trip outside the United States and go back to Canada. That's not a problem. And you're going to be able to come back into the United States, but just don't live in Canada. You got to live in the United States.
And use the proper travel document when you go to each country. So if you're Canadian going to Canada, you don't travel on your green card, you travel on your Canadian passport. If you're Canadian, or if
What?
you're
Say that again.
if you're Canadian going to Canada, you travel on your Canadian passport to Canada. If you're coming back to the U.S. and you're a green card holder, you use your green card when you're traveling back to the U.S. So use the proper travel doc. You don't come back to the U.S. on your Canadian passport. By law, you're supposed to enter on your green card.
So green card holders, everything's the same. And then they were also talking about the travel ban. So Trump has listed, I think there's 12 countries that are now listed as a travel ban to the United States. That actually happened months and months and months ago.
It was in June?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened a while ago. So there's nothing really, no big deal for Canadians there. I know they listed the countries, and dual citizens of those countries should be, I guess, scared to come to the United States. But if you're traveling on your Canadian passport, that travel ban doesn't apply to you. So you can disregard that.
Yeah, don't travel on your Iranian passport
I mean,
because it's on the list.
so Canadians who are from countries that are under the travel ban, if you have your Canadian citizenship, just use your Canadian passport. And guess what? That whole issue doesn't even apply to you anymore.
Yep.
And then the last one is gender identity. And so they're warning trans people who have used a non
X.
Yeah, in their passport.
The X identifier.
That they're going to be like super examined at the border. Well, I was on a panel with well, I wasn't on the panel, but I was in a conference on Friday where CBP was on the panel. They don't care what your passport says, M or F or X. If you have a Canadian passport that's properly issued to you and it has X marked as your gender, that's not going to cause you issues at the border. The gender identity issue here in the United States is they've decided that here in the U.S., we're not going to be issuing passports with X as an option. You're going to have M or F chosen, but it's not going to impact your Canadian passport being used at the border. I think the one exception to this would maybe trans athletes who are coming in to compete, especially at the Olympics. They should be concerned because trans athletes are not going to be allowed to come in and compete in, I think, certain athletic events. But that's a very, very small segment of the population. So unless that's you, really it's business as usual. So all you snowbirds that are getting your RVs ready for the winter and you're heading down to Florida, I think you just want to read this in the context in which it was written, which is probably more like the Canadian government wants you to stay home, spend your money in Canada.
Yes.
Don't come to the United States right now. We prefer.
They love the money.
They're trying to keep the tourism within the country, and so publishing articles like this, which sensationalize information that has not changed, really the motivation there is to keep you home. But if you don't feel like doing that, you don't have to. The United States borders are open. Canadian travelers are welcome all over here in the United States. I think a lot of businesses and tourist areas would highly welcome your visiting. You don't have to come. Clearly, there's a lot of people that choose not to. But if you do want to, nothing's changed and you have nothing to worry about.
Yep, exactly. So and I think when
most people have nothing to worry. I mean, if you have a criminal
and you have something to worry history, about, right?
You have complex. If you have immigration interactions in the United States in the past, you have a complex criminal history. Then yeah, you might want to be concerned. But the rest of you, come on down. Winter in the U.S.
And when the Trump administration took over and we saw a lot of these administrative actions, and we've seen a lot of them month to month, week to week throughout the last 10 months, it is understandable that people question what's going on, and to be cautious and to get the facts straight before you travel and understand what you're getting yourself into.
And yeah, and when you read those articles that say, hey, there was a Canadian that was detained or was suffering in detention here in the United States, generally speaking, when I see those articles, there's a lot of information that's not being explained in that article. So there's a history there. There is something you got to read between the lines. You're not getting all the information on that story. And generally speaking, when I get the full information, the situation that person ended up in is usually
self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now there was one other thing that you mentioned earlier. When you were at the conference, I wasn't there. I was in New York City smelling the disgusting New York City air.
You missed a great conference.
Yes, I heard that. But there was the one thing that all CBP also advised on. If you want to hit on that, that's the registration requirement and how they're enforcing the registration requirement.
Yeah, there was CBP were on the panel. A couple representatives from CBP were there, and they were asked questions specifically about the registration requirement and Canadians entering in compliance with the registration requirement. And they did mention that they're not too concerned with making sure that people are complying with that. It's not really their wheelhouse. Obviously, you want to comply with it. If you're coming in, you don't get issued a 994, then you're going to want to register if you're here longer than 30 days through that registration. But they're not preventing people from entering who failed to register in the past. And so what we said earlier, I think when this first came to pass, was that this is sort of a tool being used to help people, to help the government identify people who should be deported and to encourage people to self-deport. That's what this is for. This isn't for making Canadians ineligible to enter the United States. So if you need guidance on how to comply with that, there's a lot of information on our website.
Yeah, and again, with everything else we've discussed, there's really no need to fear with this. in the way that they're enforcing it.
There's a lot of fear mongering happening
Tons
right
of it.
now.
And we've had several clients throughout this process who are Canadians who did enter this year, and they entered as Canadian visitors or visa exempt Canadians, and some did and some did not comply with that registration requirement. Not one of them has had that come up in their adjustment interview to get a green card. So even USCIS at that level, they're not even looking into it. Again,
And I haven't heard of anybody who's been stopped at the border for not registering.
and we haven't seen a status denied with USCIS because of that either. Again, I think it just reiterates your point that this is for self-deportation and tracking down those that are
Overstaying
already
in the
here,
US, yeah.
that have violated, committed crimes, and say, get out of our country, or we'll find you, is
Right.
really what they're
So
saying.
our advice is continue to follow the rules. Canadian citizens, come on down and visit for your winter break, and we'd be happy to see you. And nothing's really changed, in the U.S. in the way you're going to be treated at the border for the most part.
Yep, and we've had many clients in the past weeks and months still get TNs, still get Ls, still get Es, green cards. And again, if you're doing things legally, then you should not fear expanding your business into the United States, taking a job in the United States. Those opportunities are still available to you. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Arrive podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share this podcast with your friends and family and those out there that you think would find this content useful. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.